hello everyone, and welcome back to the TBM crew. Today I have the great pleasure to have with me Chris McAuley, who is the co-creator of the StokerVerse. Also together with Dacre Stoker, who is the great-grandnephew of Bram Stoker. Right, Chris? How are you today? Thank
Yes,
you so much.
I'm good. Yeah.
There's a lot of things I want to talk to you about today. But first off, why don't you just tell us a tiny bit about you?
Okay, I'm really bad at talking about myself, but let's try. Yeah, so I'm author, novelist, short story writer, game creator, comic book writer. Uh, yeah,
That's so
it's
impressive.
most things, most media now, audio drama writer.
Mhm.
As you said, yeah, I've created the StokerVerse with Dacre Stoker. So we look at Bram Stoker's works. Obviously, Dracula's one of the core pieces in that. I've written Doctor Who stories. I work on the official Terminator RPG game,
Wow, that's
writing
awesome.
narrative for that. I think I'm allowed to say that I'm working on Terminator 2 RPG game at the minute as well. I work with Claudia Christian, who's
Mhm.
quite a famous science fiction actress from Babylon 5,
Hmm.
amongst other things. And we've created a science fiction universe called Dark Universes, and there's comics and games
Mhm.
and all sorts of things coming out of that. And I write some Lovecraftian stories as well.
Well, where did you take the time to do all of that? You look so young. Holy cow. Okay, then just to start off, how did you get involved with Dacre Stoker? I think
I
everyone is
wrote,
curious about that.
yeah, I wrote a comic strip called Dracula, Lord of the Future.
Mhm.
And it was a friend of mine who runs a comic publishing company. She was doing a horror anthology and she said, Chris, can you write something about a vampire? So
Yes.
obviously everybody thinks about Dracula, right?
Mhm. See.
So the story was what would happen if a Weyland-Yutani style company
Mhm.
decided to dig Dracula up and use his body for medical experimentations.
Hmm.
So we've got the Dracula's kind of chained and they're doing horrible things to him. And he there was a moment in the comic where
Yes.
he's sort of helpless. And he says to himself that throughout his life, he's always known great violence, but, never such indignity.
Mhm.
So I brought that out, and then he promptly rips his arm off with his teeth and goes and kills everybody in the space station, and then flies off at the end to an
Yes.
unknown destination. Dacre read it and really liked it, and he called me the next day after seeing it, and he asked me did I want to do some Bram Stoker comics. We would be taking
Ah.
Bram Stoker's short stories and then turn them into comic book format.
Mhm.
We got a publisher very quickly with that idea, and I turned Bram Stoker's, and I apologize for anybody who'd be quite sensitive to the original story title. It was originally called The Squaw.
Mhm.
I renamed it to The Virgin's Embrace because obviously it's linked to the Iron Maiden Virgin of Nuremberg.
Mhm.
And it kind of went from there to a conversation of, well, why don't we start looking at Dracula and doing sequels and prequels and
Wow.
bits in between? Um, so yeah, it's been quite a ride.
Wow. And how did you feel when he reached you out?
Yeah, it was. I mean, obviously, whenever somebody from the Bram Stoker estate comes and says, I think he was a bit scared, didn't like the story I'd written. He was like cease and desist, but no.
That,
We became good friends very quickly.
hmm.
Obviously, Bram Stoker's got Irish. The roots in the Stoker family are in Ireland. Decker's
Mhm.
actually Canadian, so I was an Irishman living in Canada, so we
Okay.
already had quite a lot in common. And he's a good guy. He's very easy to get on with. He
Mhm.
obviously has a wealth of knowledge about Dracula and Bram. I'm not just interested in Dracula. I have to say, I'm interested in Bram's work
Mhm.
in general. I Yeah, so it was good. Yeah.
That's a terrific story. I was so curious to ask you about it. And tell us a bit about your involvement in Doctor Who.
Yeah. Are you a
That's so
Doctor Who
amazing.
fan? Well, Yeah, I got approached. It was a Doctor Who annual. So
Mm-hmm.
it was a Doctor Who charity annual. They look at past previous doctors, so like the doctors before the 2005 reboot,
Yes.
which is where I came into Doctor Who. I love the classic doctors. So
Yes.
they came to me and they said, "You want to write a few stories?"
Mm-hmm.
And I said, "Of course, yeah, absolutely." So it was the seventh Doctor annual at the start,
Mm-hmm.
and I started writing origin stories for some of the characters of that run. One of them
Yes.
was called Mags, who was a werewolf
Uh-huh.
in the episode Greatest Show in the Galaxy. The creator of Mags is a lovely guy called Stephen Wyatt.
Yes.
And before I sent the story to be published, I gave it to him to look over. He
Mm-hmm.
loved it and told me it was a great tribute to his character. So we published it. And I worked with Jessica Martin, who actually played Mags.
Mm-hmm.
She illustrated the Virgin's Embrace,
Oh,
uh,
awesome.
and then she illustrated a picture of herself with the Seventh Doctor, which I colored. I'm actually a comic book inker and colorist as well, so I
Mm-hmm.
colored that. So that was kind of the start of it, and then it's moved on to the other annuals. So Dacre and I have written a few Dracula stories with Doctor Who. So we've even got a story where the Cybermen meet
Mm-hmm.
Dracula, and
Yes.
that's coming out in an annual that's being released in 2 weeks' time. And I colored most of the bits and pieces there, and I've written a Doctor Who audio drama.
Mm.
I've also been asked to write for a Doctor Who anthology, and the stories that I'm writing
Okay.
concern the Fifth Doctor. So that's kind of the involvement with Doctor Who, I suppose.
Wow. And what about your novels? Because you also have novels. You
Yeah,
took the time
yeah,
to write novels at the same time.
yeah. So we did. I wrote a novel with quite a famous Doctor Who writer called John Peel.
Mm-hmm.
So John Peel knew the creator of the Daleks, Terry Nation, and John. I think Terry was John's mentor. So John's written over 220 books in his lifetime,
Wow.
and I've always wanted to work with John. So I gave him, I rang him up, and I said,
Yes.
"Okay, do you want to write a Dracula story with me?" And he said, "Yes." He said, "Well, what do you want to do?" And I said, "Well, look, Seward's Asylum has never really been explored. And if
Mm-hmm.
we set the novel in between the original text, we could do Jack the Ripper, and we can introduce other characters, and we can have a look at what Renfield was really doing, and we can look at the origin story of vampires and how Renfield met Dracula." So he liked that idea. So the two of us wrote Dracula's Bedlam,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a novel that also has graphic novel elements to it as well. So it's got a few comic strips illustrated by Frederick Roseman,
Mm-hmm.
and that's one of the novels. I write for a lot of anthologies. I think I'm on my 17th anthology at the minute.
Wow.
Um, there's one that's just come out today called Old Scratch Tales, and it's got an origin story of Dracula in there. It's featured. It's all about the devil, and some people may know that the real life Vlad went to the Scholomance, which is a
Mm-hmm.
mystical school, a
Yes.
bit like an evil Hogwarts. And it was always said that the 10th child in payment would be given to the devil.
Mm-hmm.
And Vlad was that 10th child. So I write the story of what actually happened.
Mm-hmm.
So it's released today.
And which, well, from all these formats, the comics, because you also have audio dramas, right?
Yes.
The games, which of them do you enjoy the most working with?
I think they're
Which
all
is more
equal.
fun?
I don't know really. Maybe comics, maybe. Um, they're all different.
Mm-hmm.
So you just switch headgears when you're writing, so if you're writing an audio, what you're trying to do is listen for the voice.
Yeah.
When you're writing a comic book, what you're trying to do is see the panels.
Hmm.
And what you're trying to do then, if you're writing a novel, is you're trying to see the characterization. You're trying to see the long. It's almost
Mm-hmm.
like the long-term relationship that the reader is going to have with the characters. Short
Yes.
stories are in and outs. You get in, show the action, tell a story, and get out. Because usually
Yes.
with anthologies, you've got about 8 to 10 pages if you're lucky.
Yeah.
So it's all of that. I've started writing flash fiction as well. which is fun, which is like, 2 pages. So you've got to tell a really impactful story, a very emotional, impactful story, get in and get out very quickly. So I enjoy all of it because it's all a challenge. But I think comic books, I enjoy the process of writing for an artist. Because when I write a script, that script's not for the public, that script's for the artist, it's for the letterist, it's for the colorist, it's for all those, it's for the production line of the comic book process. So that's always fun.
That sounds like. And working for games, because you have worked, you are involved in video games. How does that work? What's the process? I have always wondered.
Well, my day job is that I'm actually a video game programmer, and I work for like a retro game company called Antstream as well. So all the games like Sonic and all of those sort of old arcade games, I work with those. So then narrative design for video games. I see the images in my head very clearly on how the player would interact with the character. So there's a video game that I'm working on with Dacre at the minute, which is a Dracula video game, obviously. And how we're going about that process is that we are imagining level by level by level and the story that you would play through. I would go to characters. So I'd create a document, I would write the characters. I would grab some images from Pinterest or whatever and say, the character should look something like this.
Okay.
This is the reason why. Then go into the enemies, then look at environment. So describe the environment, again, show images from that, and then look at weaponry and what will be used, and give snippets of cutscenes. And then the game company would take that and then they would extrapolate on that sort of stuff.
Yes, because when you're creating or even in your mind a video game, which kind of things do you have to consider thinking like if you're the gamer playing a video game, which kind of things do you have to consider being the creator?
It's very similar to writing an RPG, a paper-based RPG. You have to think of the experience. So the player experience is king. So what does the player feel? What should they feel? Should they feel empowered? Should they feel scared? Should they, intimidated? And also crafting characters that are interesting. When a player encounters an enemy, should they be curious about the enemy, the visual designs of it. I don't know if you've ever played Castlevania, but Castlevania's an amazing game series. It's sort of like gothic, supernatural stuff.
Yes.
And the first encounter with the enemies, you kind of go, okay, that's a skeleton, but the skeleton's wearing a cloak. Yes. So who would have that skeleton been? Those kind of experiences that draw the player further and further and further into the game.
And when you have the game created, like you launch it, are you always 100% happy with it, or there's sometimes that think maybe this is a scene we could have done this or that? Well, what kind of phases it goes before launching once it's created to avoid these things, maybe?
I'm always happy with every product that comes out.
Yes.
But how I look at it is if an idea comes, because you've got to be very practical with these things. Once your design period is over, it's over. You should never go back and redesign concepts.
Yeah.
It should just be designed, and then the programming or the graphic artist, all those guys that take over. But if you've got extra ideas that come through the development of the game, that's fine, because you can put that into another game. Easiest way to explain that is we launched the StokerVerse RPG, the first RPG, about 5-6 weeks ago. And obviously I'm at the minute going, oh yeah, we could have included this, we could have included that. We're doing that for the next game that's being released in October. So I see it as very much an iterative process. Okay. Am I absolutely completely happy with the work that I put out? Yes, absolutely.
And how many
artists aren't?
Sorry,
they don't.
Yes?
They say, a lot of writers say that they're not, and they're always seeking perfection.
Yes.
You can't seek perfection because it doesn't exist. What I think you've got to seek is iteration. It's got to be an iterative process, that your next product will include this, or your next product. It's all a learning experience. But the important thing as a writer or really doing anything creative,
Yes.
is to get a product to market, get it out, get it to market, get it out there, let the public value it and see what they think.
Yes. And how many people do you need in a team to create a video game? How many people are involved?
It can be anything from some you've games that are being crafted by 3 people, maybe 5 people, maybe 20. It just depends on the game, the type, and the game engine. In indie game development, which I've been involved with, sometimes it's one person that does the coding and some of the sprite work. Sometimes then it's somebody who does the play, another person that's brought in to do play testing. You can teams from 3 to 5 in an indie game.
Yes.
But for AAA platforms, usually now it's 40 to 60 people on one project.
And do you have like writers normally have a better reader group of people? Do you have the same for games? Like you just let people
generally, yeah.
Yes?
Generally, I mean, I come up with the ideas. I'll come up with the structure and the narrative and the characters. But what I try and do with the StokerVerse and Dark Universes is to give the game companies a little control, because it's not much fun for a game company to just do what you tell them to do. You know, you've chosen them to produce a product because of how they can produce a product. So I don't micromanage. What I do is say, okay, here's an idea. Do you guys like that idea? They say yes. Okay, great. Run with it. The StokerVerse RPG has a great artist called Clint Langley. And Clint's very famous in comic book circles, and he's also worked in the Warhammer franchise. And I didn't stand over Clint's shoulders and say, you know, you must do this. This character must look like that. What I did say was, if you're doing Dracula, keep Dracula to the original format that Bram suggested in the novel, and gave him a paragraph, and he went with that paragraph and created something stunning.
Well, maybe it's the best way of them being the most creative that they can be, because many times how you call it, putting chains on an artist, it's the way they don't do it. It happens to me. I draw for some people too, and the more details they give me, the worse. Because I don't have that margin of creativity, you know. But when someone calls me and tell me, I have make something dreamy, like with this concept, and do whatever you want, then those are the best drawings I make. So I can understand that. Right?
I think you look at it as a collaboration. Especially in comics is like that. You've got a collaboration and between the writer and the artist. When I write the script, I always put at the front of the script that how I describe the panels is a suggestion.
And
then I let the artist, you know, work their magic on the panels. Because I want it to be an enjoyable experience for them, and I want them to have a little bit of ownership over the product as well.
Sometimes the people drawing or making the art, maybe they have a different idea in their minds than when you write, so they have like another kind of filter. Sometimes it happened to me that someone asked me to draw a specific character of them, and when I draw them, they tell me, I had never imagined my character like that. You know, but the description is like that. I made everything they told me, but in their minds it was completely different. So which can be good or bad, depending on what they want.
At the minute we're doing the Dracula sequel, so the official Dracula sequel, and it's coming out in graphic novel format. So Dacre and I wrote the script, and the artist is a chap called Chris McAuley. And Chris sent me a couple of, you know, sketches just of the panels, and I looked at it. What I'm looking for is the action. You know, does it reflect the story? Is it a great narrative that's being told? And then whenever he inks it, it's just like, yeah, it's great, because I trust the artist and I trust the artist's vision, and that's how I work as a writer in that field. And it's very similar to you know, like video games, where, you know, the pixel artist or even another artist, and they portray a character in a particular way. I mean, you give them that creativity, you allow them to take, again, it's that form of ownership. which is satisfying for the artist then.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Having that trust on you, you work much better like that.
Yeah.
And also you had a release today.
That's right. Yes. So I was saying about the old scratch tales. Yeah. So I've got a story in that anthology. So as I was saying before, yeah, it's about Vlad meeting the devil and becoming Dracula.
Yes.
So it's a little bit of a Dracula origin story in there.
When you write for an anthology, how do you come up with the story when they tell you? I mean, sometimes anthologies, it has to go, this is the theme, for example. What's the process in your mind? Because I would be completely incapable of doing that, you know? So what's the process in your mind to create a story when they give you a theme already?
Well, there's two important words. It's what if. What I do is I think about, I imagine various scenarios and what would be the most interesting of those scenarios. So I think most writers have that, where you just sit and you imagine it. So I've been writing a lot of Cthulhu stories. I was invited into some of those anthologies, and I was quite a neophyte to Lovecraft's work. So I read some of Lovecraft's work. I read how other people interpret Lovecraft. And somebody's asked me now to write another. I think I've got 5 of these Lovecraft stories coming out this year. But somebody's asked me to write another one, and I thought, okay, what would be interesting? Okay, put Sherlock Holmes into it. So when you put Sherlock Holmes into it, what happens, and how would Sherlock Holmes react to Cthulhu? How would they react to Lovecraft? There's an anthology coming out at the end of this month called 3 Musketeers versus Cthulhu, which I've written for.
Okay.
And again, it's that, how would the Musketeers react to Lovecraft? How does Lovecraft come into the Musketeers universe? That was the start.
Yes. Okay.
And I formulated that Cardinal Richelieu, wanting more power and to secure France, opens up a gateway, and then the Lovecraftian entities start to take over the royal court, and then eventually the world. So Richelieu goes to Aramis and asks for help.
Yes.
So that's how that all sort of came, and that's now going to become a comic book. We've got a game signed in that universe as well.
Yes.
So there's a lot of stuff like that going on.
And from all your experience, which you have tons of experience, what would be your best advice for someone who's starting their career as an author? What's the greatest thing you have learned?
Yeah, go and search out your heroes. Go and find them. Don't be afraid to chat to them or to find out how they did it. That's what I did. My first mentor was a chap called Pat Mills.
Yes.
He created 2000 AD and Judge Dredd, and he was a great influence on me. So I think you've got to find your mentors.
Okay.
Don't think as a writer that you write in a vacuum. You don't. You're writing with the influence of those writers that you've loved.
Yes.
So go and seek them out if they're still alive. I'm not asking you to don't do a seance or anything like that and try and bring back dead writers like Lovecraft. But go and seek out your writing influences and chat to them about your dreams and aspirations. Feed your dreams and aspirations. Be goal oriented as a writer, and always keep a pad and paper beside you just to write down your ideas. Be productive as well. Don't give in to procrastination. Write. Get the story out. Remember, you can always do 2 or 3 drafts of the story if it doesn't seem right. Just get something on paper. So there's some advice anyway.
Yes. Do you ever suffer of writing block?
No.
No, absolutely. Of course.
No, I don't. It's that strange thing. All you're doing as a writer, I think writers get caught up in what the mystery and the mysticism of writing. There is no mysticism in writing.
Yeah.
There is no great art or great. What you're doing is you're writing down what you see in your head.
Yeah.
That is what being a writer is. Neil Gaiman always said that basically all a writer is somebody who places one word in front of the other.
Yes.
You know, the skill is knowing which word to put in front of the other, but that comes with time and practice.
Well, that's another great advice, because there's a lot of people or that they procrastinate, or maybe I guess it's also important to have your priorities properly, right? Because sometimes maybe they stop writing because they put other things in front of it. So if you're really taking it seriously, I guess that's what you have to do. Just do it, right?
Yeah. The concept that Mark Twain talked about, swallowing your frogs, right? So it's doing the thing you really don't want to do first in the day.
Yes.
You know, don't make excuses and put other things that are a little easier or feel a little bit better in front of that. Do the most difficult thing. And sometimes for people, that's sitting down and starting the first paragraph of the story. But I guarantee you, once you've got the first couple of paragraphs written, it'll start to flow.
Yeah.
You know, so I know writers who start to procrastinate, and then that creates a fear of writing where they think that they can't do it. You know, they're talking about the process, they don't actually do it. I tend not to talk about the process, I just do it. And there's worse than writer's block is the fear of audience criticism or reception.
Yes, that's another one. Yes.
Okay, so I write for myself, not for other people. I write what I think's cool. You obviously have to be a little savvy. You have to know what's going on in the marketplace so you can sell your work.
Yeah.
But primarily, you write for yourself because you think it's a cool story, and you're exploring the characters and environments for yourself primarily.
Yes.
You can't explore those things for other people. Other people discover them, but you can't explore. So I've had my fair share of criticism. I've had people who have said, this isn't like the Dracula we know, or this isn't and that's fine.
Yes.
You get people who like it, people who don't like it, and you live with it. You just say, that's fine, it's great. If there's something you can learn from people's negative responses to your work, great. If there's not, well, just be happy you've got something out there.
Not only with writing, in everything you do in life, every time you do something, you are exposed to people.
Yeah.
So you need to know, I guess there's a lot of writers, as you say, that they are scared of that. And it's like you say, just do it, and you'll learn from your mistakes, because maybe it's a fair review if it's a bad review because of something that you missed, but that's how you learn, really, in everything in life. I mean, even when you start a new job, for example, you're young and you start a new job, you're gonna mess up and you're gonna do it wrong at the beginning. You're exposing yourself to the other people seeing you doing wrong.
Yeah,
that's how we learn. And
I think
doing it.
Yeah, and you definitely shouldn't be afraid of any sort of advice or criticism. People can be very cruel. I mean, your audience can always be quite cruel. But remember, they've spent money to read what you've written. They have a right to be angry if they spent £20 or $20 on something that they don't like. It's fine.
Yes, absolutely. And if someone wants to check out your work, where should they start from?
We've got a website called www.dark-universes.com.
Okay.
So you can see on the front cover there all the different types of material that's available. I actually feel sorry for our web developer, because he's constantly having to add new things. Nightfall Games, if you want to check out StokerVerse RPG and the Terminator RPG.
Yes.
Let's see what else. Generally, just a good old Google of my name and put Amazon in there, and you'll see lots of. Because I write for Horror Zine, I write for Schlock Webzine, I write for Lovecraftina, and then obviously all the various anthologies. So yeah,
you have material for everyone, any kind of horror fan.
Yeah, right? Yeah. So the horror, sci-fi, crime. I've written a few crime stories. Yes. So yeah.
Okay, and so they can find you there. We'll link everything below so everyone can check out your work. And it's so lovely to talk to you, but we're running out of time. We need to make another one. We still have
Yeah, well,
things.
I'm always up for a chat.
Yes. Okay. Do you have a message for the people who's listening to us? Your new projects, your recommendation?
Yeah, yeah, just check out StokerVerse, Dark Universes. You know, drop me a line, tell me what you think of the products. You know, I've got thick skin, so if you didn't like them, you can tell me, it's fine. And yeah, thanks for watching and listening to me talk about my work.
Okay, thank you so much. Keep me updated on your new releases, that you have lots of things in this year, lots of projects.
Yeah, yeah, we've got our Dracula sequel comic. We've got I think 7 or 8 different games coming out. We've got
Yes.
Cthulhu stuff. We've got science fiction comics. There's 3 science fiction comics coming out. Yeah, lots of stuff coming out, and anthologies as well. Yeah, and Doctor Who, lots of Doctor Who stuff coming out.
That's so exciting.
So, yeah.
Okay, then thank you so much for your time. It's been so lovely to talk to you.
Thanks very much. Bye,
okay.
folks.
Okay. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Bye.